did get today's. I got on today's call. It was great. I think it was really nice.
Was it good? Right.
Yeah, very much so. It's all about the discussion too is when it comes to this prosperity and abundance, the conversation, it always seems to lean back onto the that we're living in this state of lack. I don't have enough. I don't have enough, and then we're not focusing on the real way to drive prosperity and abundance is to feel that we have enough to be in that moment versus feeling that we don't have enough.
Yeah, to know that we do instead of the feeling of lack. There is a thing when I started going to India, there's a thing that I characterized as Western striving disease is what I called it, which was no matter what you had, you wanted more. Now, to be fair, I think middle-class Indian people may well be the same, a lot of them. And there's maybe like 350 million, I think, middle-class Indian people, about sort of the population of America. But, there's a billion poorer people as well. And obviously some of those people, they have difficult lives, but a lot of the poorer people we met, they don't seem to have that. They seem to have a different philosophy going on that they're not necessarily striving for something more and bigger and better, hoping it will make them happy. Beyond food and shelter and water, which, people aren't starving to death or anything, but obviously people are very poor there. But anyway, it did kind of make me think about what I call Western striving disease, which is no matter what you have, you want the next thing up. You got a nice house and it's like, okay, I want a better house. You got a nice car, I want a better car. I went here on a vacation. Next time I want to go somewhere else on a vacation. Maybe I can fly business class. Maybe I can fly first class, and then I will feel fabulous.
Yeah. Well, and there's these two concepts that people talk about. One is, well, I really want this car. It's $9,000. I don't have the car. I don't have the money, but I'm going to go get it anyway. And I'm just going to let the universe bring me the money. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if that's, I don't know if that's the right answer. And then it's the other side, which, hey, I think, why haven't I, whatever, come into $100 million? And it's the other was, well, you don't need it, and the universe isn't going to give it to you. You're not ready for it, right? So these two sides of, I'm just going to spend the money and hope the universe reimburses me, right? Or believe the universe will reimburse me. And the other side is, well, why haven't I, if I'm doing all these practices, why haven't I just come into $100 million yet? And then the answer is because you're not ready for it. And
yeah, well, I know some people have that approach of the universe will bring me this, that, and the other, but really the idea is that you receive an inspiration to do something and then you feel fear. Like I need, in my work, I need to do a bunch of videos and things like that, and I've kind of put it off. And I got all these excuses, but essentially I know that it is actually an inspired thing to do in this kind of work, and also in my day job sort of work as well. And once I start doing it, it's fun, but essentially I feel a kind of a barrier of fear. And when I push past that fear, like when I've done, for example, in the past, I've done 10 days of Facebook Live, like a 10-day challenge. And the first time it's terrifying, to do a Facebook Live. And then by the end of it, it's like, oh, this is easy. It's a piece of cake. And it's the fear, that once you start doing the thing, it's actually, oh, that was just a thought or a feeling I had of fear. So anyway, the idea is you receive an inspiration to do something new or different. Most of us ignore the inspiration or feel the fear and don't do it. And we have excuses like, that's too hard, that's too boring. I'll get my hair done, I'll get my makeup done, I'll get some different clothes, I'll get a better camera. I'll do that tomorrow, I'll do that next week. All of which I've come to realize is about resistance and fear. It's like, do it. And in fact, on that basis, I'm going to do some videos today. It's 8:30 in the morning here on Friday. And I'll do some videos today because really there's no good reason not to do something. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something anyway. So you push past the fear and then you actually enter a new realm. So I'm not really such a big fan of, I'll sit back with my feet up and allow the universe to bring me the money for my next car.
It's to me, it's just, it's not about belief, right? It's like, oh, you don't believe in this, like, no, I do believe in the law of attraction. I do believe in in what we're doing. I really do. And I do believe that we do create, right, our realities. The idea that we would step off a mountain and that a cloud would catch us. I'm like, there is, and your mind or your body or something is supposed to protect you from doing things that are a little too silly, right? Or a little too, maybe when you get to a higher level, all those things are possible, right? But, to go out and spend money you don't have on a credit card that, it's got crazy interest payments that you'll owe 3 times that in a matter of,
Yeah.
like, to me, I'm like, okay, well, shouldn't I find a way or find a way to embrace the having the money before I go out and get the car?
Yeah. Well, the law of attraction says that the thing you want exists, and you don't have it because you're not a vibrational match to it. And under the law of attraction concept, you become a vibrational match to the thing you desire, and then the thing becomes part of your reality. And I knew this was true a long time ago because I seemed to be able to do it quite often with things I didn't want, and I realized that I was creating those. And sporadically I would do it with things I did want, but I had no idea what the mechanism was. And then I understood that it was that I was moving in and out of alignment, and I was moving in alignment with the current of fear and attracting things I didn't want. And so really I wanted to get into alignment with the current of love. So the thing exists, and you just got to be a vibrational match to it. But another part is that the concept of abundance under the law of attraction is that you have everything you need in this moment and for whatever you're doing at this time. And you may or may not need $100 million. And most people don't need $100 million to do what they need to do. And as you say, they're not ready for it. And there's all those cliche stories about lottery winners, which are true, that they receive the money, they're not a vibrational match to it, and their life turns to rubbish. They end up in a year or two much worse off in many ways than they were before. And that's because $100 million, when we do those kind of exercises, like if you had $100 million and you had to spend it today, what would you do? Or if you had $100 million and you didn't have to spend it today, what are you going to do with it anyway? And pretty much everybody's like, oh yeah, no, well, I would help out my kids or my parents or my brothers or my sisters or this friend or that friend or whatever. And then, you spend 5 or 10 or something, whatever it is. You might buy a better car or a house or a vacation house. But even so, you're still left with like 60, 70, 80, $90 million. And what am I going to do with that now? Like, sure, I can invest it and live off the income and blah, blah. But then most people realize, I say I want $100 million, but do I really? And there's also that thing that, do we want to just start to control conditions? Do we want to use that money to buy love and respect and stuff from those feelings from other people? Is that what we're trying to do? Or would we be giving it purely out of love, with no expectation of anything in return, including any appreciation or gratitude or whatever? Like, where are we? What do you and I've talked about this before, and it's quite an interesting thing. But the fact is that most people are not a match to $100 million. They'll never attract it. And if they won it in a lottery, they may discover that it's actually not all it's cracked up to be.
No, I think you have to have, and it's funny because we've talked about, like, what would you do? I know what I would do. I know what I would buy. I know how I would, go after things. And for me, it's always been about building businesses, building platforms that will allow you to build multiple businesses and have fun and create opportunities for people to grow and to expand. Being able to run a company and support people the way you believe they should be supported, and you believe a company, that's a gift. That's an incredible opportunity. A lot of people don't get to take that. Everyone just likes to complain about work. Like, for me, I'm always looking at the next, hey, so I was in LA this week on a business trip, and one of the partners we're working with is just, it's become very distracting, and we can't focus, right? And the woman we were working with, she had said, she gave us this story, and I wanted to share it with you because I was like, blew my mind. So Eastern Airlines is an airline in the United States that went out of business in the 70s or the 80s, right? So Flight 401 was taking off from, in 1973, was taking off from Kennedy to going to Miami. And as their approach to Miami, the pilots went to drop the landing gear. And there are 3 lights, one for each landing gear, right? One up front, two under the wings. And one of them didn't light. So they put the plane in autopilot at the approach to Miami International, which is around 500 feet. And this is a true story, which is insane. They found out the bulb was stuck in the control panel. So they were trying to get it unstuck, and it took both of them to try to get their fingers and get the bulb out. They got the bulb out, and they tapped on it, and then they were trying to put it, and they couldn't get it back in. It had become awkward. And while they were trying to get leverage to stick the bulb back in, one of the pilot's knees hit the autopilot button and turned it off.
Oh, wow.
And the plane started to descend, 173 souls on the plane.
Wow.
And it started to descend slowly, until all the warnings were going off, but they were so focused on that bulb and so focused on getting in there, they did not see or hear any of the warnings that went off. And by the time that they did hear it, they were 50 feet above, and the plane crashed. Yep, 100, and out of the 173, 100 people died.
Wow.
But it is actually like it's like one of these life lessons that you get so focused on that tiny little task in front of you, you miss that big picture.
Yeah.
And all of their energy, everything was on that bulb. Nothing else, not the safe landing, not the 173 souls, nothing else mattered. And you talk about being a deliberate creator. Like they didn't hear, there were alarms, bells, the black box showed all of the different elements. The conversation was, why wasn't the bulb, you're at 50 feet, you're at 50 feet. Why can't I get the bulb back? That's the conversation, right, that the black box is recording. You talk about people driving themselves to crash land. I mean, that was like a huge, like I had goosebumps on my arm going, oh my goodness. How many times have we all done that, right? It's like,
it is a metaphor.
The universe is giving them, right?
It is a
Give them
metaphor,
safety
isn't
message to tell them everything, and you're like, no.
Well, I think in a way, you and I have had a similar experience on the big scale in business, that we received a message from our inner selves saying, you need to get your life into alignment. You need to be following a different path if you want true happiness and joy, and to discover your purpose in life and all that kind of stuff. And then, oh, you're not listening? Well, let me present you with another level of difficulty, and you're still not listening. Well, let me make things a lot worse for you. And what, you're still not listening? Okay, you've got a few choices here. I can ruin you financially. I can ruin your health. We're actually going to do some of these things now until you finally wake up and smell the coffee. And that's kind of what happens, that, what we call a manifestation event, which is an event which causes you to feel an intense emotion. Normally we think about intense negative emotion. It can also be positive. Just explaining for the sake of anybody listening here that what a manifestation event is, since it's part of the jargon that we use. And so you feel negative emotion around an event that happens, something that happens at work, or an investment goes wrong, or whatever. It can be a small thing or a big thing. And then once you start to analyze that manifestation event, it points out, what is my limiting belief? We discover our limiting belief. I say decommission it. We reduce its intensity. You can never vanish them. They're always part of us. And then we reduce the intensity of it and move on to the next thing. And you and I have been doing a lot of work around that, because in the past, we kind of kept going until we hit the wall. And because we didn't listen to those messages from our inner selves. And you're right. I mean, you can imagine as that metaphor of that Eastern Airlines flight, that our inner self is like, I can't believe this guy. I've got the warning thing is saying 50 feet, 50 feet, 50 feet. He's still not listening. But is he going to have to hit the ground before he listens? And, with respect to all those souls who died, I don't want to sound like I'm trivializing that event, but it is a fabulous metaphor for me, and from what you said about yourself, as to, oh my God, the signs were so obvious, and I didn't listen until things got really bad. And then I finally did listen and started to turn my life around and to get the life that I want.
We do. We look for those in it, and then we look for those little imperfections, right? And as we look for those little imperfections, we're missing everything else. And it's, you look at on social media right now, where it's, it's judgment day, right? That's all it is, right? Everyone's just beating each other up. Judgment this, judgment that. We're going to critique, criticize, and judge. We're going to find the one imperfection. And society, the media, you look at, there could be two stats. We could be, and if you use COVID deaths could be down 1,000,000%. But if one more person gets COVID or is diagnosed with a positive test, the report is positive tests up in our area versus, there's been no deaths for COVID in our area for 3 months now. That's not so it's always looking for that little imperfection, and everything. We're just trained. You talk to somebody at work. We did this, I just finished writing this 25-page, report, and somebody was like, well, there's some spelling errors. I'm like, yeah. It's yeah, there's going to be some issues. It's going to take us a week to go through it all. It's just like, that's what it doesn't, but I'm like, does the content make, oh yeah, I'm like, then let's start with that. Right. And it's funny that everything we do and every conversation we have starts with well, this isn't right. That's not right. I was listening to somebody order food the other day, and I was horrified. At the exchange between the waiter. I mean, we're not talking fancy restaurants, where it's like, I want this on the side. Now, don't do this. Last time at another restaurant, they did this. Don't you do that? And you're like, what? In 1862, there was and I'm like, I don't even know how to have these, but that's society. That's what. So when we walk out of our house or walk out of this bubble that we try to create for ourselves, it's this onslaught of imperfection notification, and it's just constantly in our face, right?
Yeah, it is a strange thing that we do tend to look at the negative side of everything. And restaurants, I guess that's a good example, because I have in the past eaten in some of the best restaurants, like in France, for example, the Michelin's 3-star restaurants. I've eaten at those, and it's fabulous. I love that stuff. And the best restaurants we have here, and some wonderful restaurants in other countries, in the UK and in the States as well. And so I know all about fine dining and what to expect at that really high level, and matching food and wine. And I know a lot about that stuff, but I kind of got to the point where, hold on a minute, the reason I'm going out for a meal is because I want to enjoy myself, I want to enjoy the food, and I want to enjoy the company. So if I hold everything up to some high imaginary standard, then I'm not going to enjoy it. So instead, I flipped it around, and I basically, no matter, even if the service is bad or the food is really not good, I generally don't criticize it. I may comment, but I don't criticize. It would be commenting out of interest, but generally I don't even do that, because it's like, at the end of the day, it's only food, right? And food is about sustenance. And so let's just not forget, like, what do we want? We want some sustenance, and we want to enjoy the experience, and we want to enjoy the company. So, well, let's not impose an imaginary standard, make it fail by that standard, and therefore I don't achieve my objectives of enjoying myself. I want to feel good. I don't want to feel bad. If I'm feeling bad, I'm out of alignment. I want to be in alignment while I am having that meal, and I want to be good company, and I want to enjoy the company I'm with.
What you said was so powerful, and it's something, and it kind of just enlightened me when you said it. And isn't the reason we do everything to have fun and enjoy it, and to enjoy what we're on?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, the aim is that, to feel good,
right?
To experience joy, happiness, to feel good, right? When you feel good, you're more likely to be in alignment. When you're feeling bad, you're more likely to be out of alignment. You want to attract more of the things that make you feel good, and you want to attract less of the things that make you feel bad.
Right. But we tend to hold those feelings for special events. Like you're saying, if I'm going to go out to dinner, right? Which is really, it's just a lot of clarification for me when you said that. Like, yeah, like I'm gonna be here working. I'm like, oh, I gotta work, and I'm like, right? You pump, pounding away on it. But I'm like, I've recently, through this course, I've just been like, I had to write this this business plan yesterday, and I was exhausted. I had just gotten back. I was away all weekend on a trip. Came back, had to be away in business, and I just said, you know what? This is fun. Like, I actually like doing that stuff, right? So I'm like, this is fun. I'm gonna have fun. I was able to pump it out in one day. I had done all the research already, so I was able to pull all the data I needed to, right, to create it. It was weeks worth of data pulling, but I was prepared for it. I'm gonna have fun, and it came out great. And that was, and I knew I was gonna have fun. I've been purposefully deciding to, every time I get up and I step towards something, if I'm gonna go down and get a glass of water, like, oh, how am I gonna to see my kids? Like, what? Trying to say, like, wow, like, okay, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna take a break, instead of saying,
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't really feel like eating right now. I don't have anything to eat, right? It's like, oh, I don't like lunch. Do I have to go out, right? No, like, everything is a special event. And trying to, from my perspective, make sure that I am seeing it as it truly is, an incredible experience, and
Yeah.
feel that way about it without
I
trying
think
to force it.
I think it's a really good approach, that if you can take that kind of almost ecstatic approach to life, that you enjoy everything. There was something I read in a book. It was about, I don't know, maybe the Saint Therese. The phrase Saint Therese of the Little Way sticks in my mind. And the philosophy was that if you're doing the dishes, do it, be fully present, and actually appreciate what you're doing. That you have these vessels, as we call them when we're in India. You have these plates and these cups and glasses and cutlery and stuff, and like, we take it for granted, but actually it's awesome that we got all this beautiful stuff that's been made, to such a high standard, and it's so durable. And then you wash it and it's clean and ready to use again. And if you compare that to a few hundred years ago, when none of that existed, like, we take it for granted. But if you can actually think, if you can be conscious of those little things, like, I'm sitting at this beautiful desk, which I bought a number of years ago, but it's an incredible desk. It's a beautiful piece of wood. It's very high tech. It's got this thing, you can crank it up for the height that you want. It looks good. It's got plenty of leg room. Like, it's, as desks go, this is a great desk. And I do appreciate it, and like, I really, really, it sounds crazy, but I love my fountain pen. I really like it. And I like the whole tradition of the ink, and I really appreciate using it, but also I find it really easy to, I guess, connected or inspired writing, like, the stuff kind of just flows out through the nib. And when I start doing the law of attraction work, like in the Ascension Experience or the boot camp, when we're writing out stuff, I find that stuff flows out of the nib, that it's almost like automatic writing at times. And so I associate that pen with that process, and that's an incredibly rich experience when words start appearing on the paper that I didn't think. It's like, oh, I just wrote that. Where did that come from?
Well, I think, I think in one of my one-on-ones with Joshua, the channeling that Gary was channeling, he had said, Joshua had made the statement, or somebody had made the statement, do you ever know what you're going to say, how you're going to finish the sentence? And the answer is no. Like you don't go into a conversation and, like, we're not, this is not Joe Biden. We're not reading a script from top to bottom, or having somebody in your earpiece, like, telling you exactly what to say. Right.
Yeah.
When Donald Trump says something ridiculous, I don't think he went up there in his mind to say something stupid and ridiculous. Something inspired him to say that. And maybe he's got the devil on his shoulder. I don't know. But with all of us, right, if you really think about it, and those are just two funny extremes, right? But if you think about it, when you start a conversation with somebody, you rarely know how you're going to finish it. But
that is true.
You do.
Yeah, that is true. And when I was talking before, I was very aware of that I was kind of making it up as I went. I knew I started saying something, and then it suddenly morphed into something else, and that I did not plan to turn washing the dishes into my fountain pen and automatic writing. But that's what happened. I went from the dishes to my desk to my pen, because they're the things in front of me. But to appreciate those moments, and also I think with work, sometimes work tasks can be a chore, or we think they're a chore. But if you can actually find a way to enjoy them and appreciate them from a bigger context, that you're doing something that's going to be really beneficial for somebody else, or it's interesting and exciting in you, or it's intellectually stimulating, whatever it might be. Because I found that since I started doing that, I'm far more productive with my work, like the client type of work that I'm doing. And the most satisfying work is the stuff that I'm doing for myself, and in particular work to do with LOA, law of attraction, but also our other, projects of our own. And the client work is good and the clients are wonderful, but it's never as exciting as the other stuff. But then I thought, well, these people are paying me, they're trusting me, I can actually help them. I know stuff they need. and I actually like them. I enjoy working with them, and I can make a difference in their business. So it's like, instead of thinking of it as a chore, I can also think of it as an inspired opportunity.
Yeah, and it's trying, so like on this flight, so it turns out that we were in Colorado. We were at the Air Force Academy over the weekend, and we were with a team and doing a bunch of stuff. By the way, one of the most beautiful, wow, I gotta say, it's Colorado, where the Air Force Academy is laid out, is like the most picturesque place on the planet, just beautiful. And we went to lunch with a large group after the games on Sunday, and we had to get to the airport, and everybody's in a full panic. Oh my God, we're not going to make it. And I'm like, we're not. We're going to drive. There's time. It'll be fine. What if there's the line at for security?
Oh,
What if, I'm like, guys, if this is like, let's just take a deep breath. We're going to take one segment of the trip. Right now, let's not worry about something we have and we just took our time, and we literally, Colorado, Denver airport's huge. And we arrived like an hour before our flight, had to check luggage, had to get through security, and we did it all and had plenty of time. The flight was delayed like a half hour, which was perfect. Right. I'm like, it all worked out. Everything was fine. Right. And then coming home from my flight from LA on Tuesday, I kind of left a little bit too early, and I got to the airport with a lot of extra time. And I realized that I needed to just catch up on emails, and I sat down, and 2 hours later I had finished, going through and answering, whatever the 250 emails that I had gotten done. And then they were like, and we're boarding. And I'm like, see, it's like, there's a reason and I look at it that way, not like, oh, what am I going to do? I'm here too early. I'm like, okay, there's a reason why I'm here. And everything, it was trying to find, instead of finding those imperfections, right, which we're just so used to, right, we're so trained to point out, oh, I'm here too early. Like if I was to text my wife and go, well, yeah, I'm here, I actually really overestimated how long it was going to take me to get here, and I'm here really quickly. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? There's plenty of things to do here, right?
Yeah.
It's not like I'm in the middle of the desert, but that's a reaction.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. Like, no, it's perfect. And I put my earphones on, I put my music on, and literally went through 250 emails. And when I finally hit the last one, the announcer was, we're ready to board now. And I'm like, I just said, that's just too crazy, right? It's just
perfect.
cuckoo.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really is. It's just, so I'm trying to see that element. And like I said, I didn't change the condition. I didn't do anything. I just looked at it differently. And there, I could see people getting up, walking around. People were annoyed because, once again, I think that flight was delayed again, like an hour as well, which would made it, just a lot more time. But I just said, that's where it is.
Well, I think there's a very important point or lesson, you might say, in what you've just described, because each day there can be 100 little annoyances and some big ones, or you can flip them around and look at the other side of each coin and say, oh, well, the flight's going to leave when it's going to leave. I can't change that, right? It's either going to be early or later on time, whatever it's going to be, but that's going to happen. So therefore, I have this hour I didn't expect, and that's awesome. And you can get upset because the flight's late and it means this, that, and the other, but or you can actually say, oh, well, this is happening and I'm going to find the silver lining in this apparent cloud. So, because I noticed that as I got older, that I kind of became, I suppose I could have become grumpier. And that does tend to happen to a lot of people. And I think it's the accumulation of kind of negative attitudes to everything. And then you realize, well, actually, it's all neutral or good. There's nothing really bad unless you want to look at the bad in it. And I've kind of rediscovered my joy of life, the joy in many tiny moments, and then, which makes a joyful life, which makes me a much happier person, nicer to be around as well. And I think it's so easy to think, we're going to be late, or we are late, or the flight's late, and this is wrong, and that is wrong, and there's a red traffic light, and the rental car return queue is longer than I wanted it to be, or whatever it might be, and it's like, hold on. Eventually I'm going to get home, and even if I miss my flight and got a different one, in a day or a week, I won't even remember that, and it will mean nothing, and therefore it means nothing now.
Well said. And if you really, if I take a look and I mean, there was a boatload of traffic coming into Denver. The directional, the guidance system in the car took me like through some back roads. We cut off a whole bunch of traffic. Like everyone's just, I'm just laughing in the car at this point. When we went to drop the car off, we dropped it off at the rental place right next to the bus that was going to take you to the air. I mean, it was like, I said to them, this was like serendipity. I mean, you couldn't get,
Yeah.
but they're all complaining. And I'm like, are you complaining? This is insane. And then I have Clear. I don't know if you have that with you guys, where you actually put your fingerprints in and you get pre-checked, so you don't have to go through the long check in security. They actually bring you right up to the gate. You basically give them blood samples. They can check you out, so they know you're not a bad guy. And my wife, hers had run out. And I'm like, you're like, well, you have to read. And then some guy's like, oh no, it's just an update for the credit card. This will take 10 seconds. And I'm like, and we just walked. I mean, the line was 400 people long, and we just went. And I'm like, how? And then the flight was delayed a half hour, and everybody else was like, oh, I can't believe Mom doesn't have her. And I'm like, no, it took 10 seconds. Like, how easy is that?
Well, flying
right?
is an interesting thing these days, because flying, it's no fun or romance anymore. And we've flown, until COVID, we were flying a lot because we were living in India and France and traveling of the world. And in the end, we kind of stripped it down to its bare minimum. We ended up like just getting the cheapest flights we can, attaching no importance or value to it, because we're flying everywhere all the time, right? And then and I noticed in the last few flights I did just domestically, that I put in my earbuds, listening to podcasts, and I just completely tuned out of everything. And this is a budget airline I use at home sometimes, and it's pretty unpleasant. Like I always feel like I'm cattle in the cattle truck or the sheep truck or whatever. I feel like I'm being herded and all the rest of it. And it did annoy me, but it doesn't anymore. And I realized after that flight that I kind of tuned out to pretty much everything really, and just went into my own space and enjoyed that time. And I got where we were going. I thought, I actually really enjoyed that whole experience. And all the things about weighing this, be your bag in the lounge, which is a stupid practice, none of that bugged me at all. And I thought, okay, these are their rules. We'll make sure we're on top of our game, so we never have any problems. And it just went. It was very nice. I mean, the whole thing about flying is that because of all the security checks, you kind of give up a lot of control when you enter into that zone. They take control of everything, and they do have a lot of power and control. And you basically have to kind of surrender to it and not attach any judgment to it. I think it's a really good. If you can master your mindset around that, it's a really good practice to master something more challenging next.
I couldn't agree more. And it's what I've leaned into more and more is that like another sort of this travel thing. I needed to send these emails out, and I had gotten a phone call, and it was this new business situation, and the person on the other end was just irritating. I mean, she was 10 steps ahead, all over the page. And I actually had said to her, I'm like, listen, I'm not ready to have this conversation. I'm like, I need, can you give me, she wouldn't give up. But so it really was dragging me into this bad, and I didn't get done what I needed to get done. And then I said, listen, we're going to have to talk next week. This was on Friday. I said, I'm not prepared to do this, but it's easy. You're not listening. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm sorry. You're right. It's me. I just get off the phone. And I didn't get what I need to get done with, but and then I shook it off. I was just like, wow. But I felt this negative energy. I was like, wow, this is just okay. And it was nothing urgent. It was nothing that mattered. And when we got to the airport, we had gotten there, and everything once again zoomed right through. I'm like, wow. And my wife's like, I still have status at American. Let's go to the lounge. Like, okay, we got to the lounge. I had an hour. I had my computer, flipped it up. Well, free Wi-Fi, sent every email I needed to send. I'm like, how much easier could this be?
Yeah.
And I just sort of leaned into it. I wasn't like, I can't believe that woman, made me not send those emails, or I can't bleave she didn't, pay attention. I was like, it is what it is, but you're the more you lean into it like that, and lean into it in an uncharacteristic positive way, the more it works out.
Yeah. Yeah. We had some friends come and stay the other day, and I've known this woman through business for a long time, and she knows nothing about the law of attraction. But I noticed when she was staying with us, she would start to talk about things that bugged her at work, and she'd kind of get more and more wound up and focused on this thing. And I realized, well, no wonder you end up with a lot of unpleasant situations at your work, because you're just focusing on all the negative of everything, and you are choosing to explore more and more and more of the negative, and you're attracting more and more. So it's just you kind of look at it and think, why do all these bad things happen to her at work? It always seems to happen. And I sat there and watched, and I thought, oh, okay, now I know why you have so many difficult work experiences. She's a good person, she's a wonderful person, but she, instead of focusing on all the good things about that work experience, she focuses on the bad. She attracts more of it, because as far as the universe is concerned, if you're putting that much feeling into this bad stuff, then you want to explore more of it. So, hey, we'll give you some more of it. However, she did message me after they left, and they were driving up the coast, and about 3 or 4 hours from here, there was this massive earthquake, probably a couple of years ago now. There's this massive mountain range that comes straight out of the ocean. And if you stop and think about it, there's only one way that massive mountain range got there, which was, tectonic uplift, right? Earthquake. So over millions of years, there's been countless earthquakes there. So there was a really big one. The roads all got smashed. And so they're still fixing roads. And because the mountains come right down, they have to stabilize all these cliff faces with, metal cages and everything, put new roads and tunnels and bridges and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so the point is, she got to this point where it's one way, because they're still working on the road, and it's half an hour. Every half hour the traffic goes. So they missed the green light by like a minute. And she initially said, oh, we missed the green light by a minute, and now we're here for 30 minutes. But then the next thing, she sent me a photo saying, however, look at this beautiful place where we're stuck. And I thought, this is awesome. She sent a photo, because the light in this particular place is incredible. The water is this impossible blue, and the sky is as well. I don't know what it is, but it's just the most magical place. And she immediately got into the thing of, oh, look where we're stuck for half an hour. This is just so beautiful. And I thought, excellent, very, very good.
That, it's so funny. So one of the guys I was having dinner with on Monday in LA, and he is, and like I said, it's so funny. We almost you clarified, I clarified. He's a wonderful guy, but man, he attracts all the negativity. It's insane. He doesn't know how to focus on the positive on anything. Very successful guy. He's pulls up in his Lamborghini. I mean, he's that kind of, he's and he's very generous, like very, very nice guy. But man, he's just like, why does this always happen? Why does all this bad stuff happen to me? I'm like, and I want to say to him, like, because I haven't heard you say a good thing about anything ever.
Yeah.
Right. And he's not beating up people. He's just like, everything is bad. Everything is wrong. Everything is terrible. Right. And I wanted to say to him, this is like sort of a limiting belief. And I wanted to have this conversation with him, like, if you would just take a day and only focus and only remark on positives, your whole life would change.
Yeah. So we tend to think of abundance purely as financial abundance, right? That tends to be what most people think of financial prosperity. But really, a definition of abundance is that financial abundance, time, freedom, health, love and relationships, enjoyment of every day or every moment, joy in your life. I mean, they're all measures of abundance, but we tend to get focused on one thing. And there are people who are financially abundant who have all of the other things as well, but there are also many people like him who have massive abundance in one area and quite a deficit in another, which kind of, it's like, man, with all that money and that amazing car, you should be the happiest guy around, and why aren't you?
Multiple houses on the beach. He's like, I'm going to rent one out. He rented out to renters, typical California, right? And then renters stopped paying rent in like month 2, like, blocked off all the security. He's like, how does this happen to me?
Yeah.
And I'm like, his condo floods. and they won't let the board won't let a certain, plumber in. You got to go, you got a certain certify, right?
Right.
So, but this is what, and it's, and I said to him, and it's a tough conversation to have with people that aren't ready. Right.
Yeah.
And just because they say, why does this always happen to me? It's not an opening to give them an answer. It's more of a rhetorical, commonality. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so, and I wanted to just jump over the table and say to him, listen, you and I spend a day together, and we're just going to focus on the good stuff. We're just going to talk about how great everything is. Right. Everything's going to be perfect. I promise you.
And it's a good mind trick that, I mean, it doesn't even have to be woo-woo, right? It doesn't have to be law of attraction, LOA based. It can actually be, for example, I know a lot of therapists use the concept of reframing. And so, yeah. And then you just say, okay, reframe that thing you just said and tell me it from a positive point of view.
Yeah, that's exactly, it's to me, it's, and it took me a while to get it, right? I mean, you and I we can talk about it. And we've talked about this almost every time we chat, because I think, when the way you explain reframing is really just, it's a very, very simple tool. It's tough to do the first time and do the second time and believe it. I can do it as an exercise, and you and I are having a conversation, but the third or fourth time you do it, and then you start to believe it, and then you're like, wait a minute, like this is too much fun. Like, this is actually fun.
Well, with the whole thing around in the law of attraction, that one of the fundamental goals is to accept that everything in the present moment is perfect. That's kind of the first step. And then you think about what everything in the future is perfect, which means that you stop projecting fear and worry into the future, because that's just a thought. So why not send a more positive one into the future, since it's kind of arbitrary? And then probably the hardest one for most people is to consider everything that happened in the past is perfect as well, to let go of judgments. Man, I made such a bad mistake with that decision, or I should never have done this, or resentments against people, to let go of all resentments against people. So it's pretty hard to do all of that, but then you're thinking, right, this event is happening to me now. How is that a positive thing instead of a negative thing? And so a lot of people go to the most extreme use cases. Like the moment you say, well, everything is perfect, they say, well, what about, child poverty, or what about, and they pick some fairly extreme things. And right out at the end of the spectrum would be murder, the Holocaust, or whatever. And so it's okay. Let's start right here. Let's start here with you right in this moment. And I've been listening to quite a few of the Joshua podcasts, Gary's podcasts on this, and they've been talking about this quite a bit lately, because they say, well, why don't you just focus on your own experience, right? Instead of trying to imagine this happened to somebody else, some terrible thing, you don't really know anything about that. So why don't you just focus on your own experience instead of trying to imagine somebody else's life and project all your fear and worry into their life? And I thought that's a very good point, because I've been saying to people, well, you start with the baby steps. You start with something really easy, which is like the traffic light went red and I was in a hurry. So that's not too hard to say, well, that did give me a moment to calm and reflect, and I'm going to arrive at that meeting in a much better state of mind, because I actually used that minute at the light, or 2 minutes, to actually get focused and blah, blah, blah. And so you can start with something simple, and then you go to something bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually you look at, the flooding condo and the tenants who won't pay the rent, and, the renters who don't pay the rent, all that kind of thing. And then you can go to something bigger. But if you kind of just keep it to yourself, because that's all you really know, then it becomes a much easier task to actually apply that everything is perfect concept.
Yeah, that's really well said. I mean, that honestly debunks most people's reason to worry, because it hasn't happened to them.
Yeah, when you analyze that, it sounds so stupid, because it's like, what are you worried about? You're worried about the future. So you're just imagining something that hasn't happened, and you're fixating on that. It's a fear. And if it did happen, it will be unpleasant, but it hasn't happened. And if you believe in the law of attraction, you don't want to be focusing on the thing you don't want. You want to focus on the thing you do want. But in any case, why not just trick yourself, and say, it's all going to work out perfectly. It's going to be brilliant. It always is brilliant. It's always amazing. And I'm not going to worry about it. Whatever happens, I can cope with. And so I'm just choosing to look at the positive of this thing instead of the negative. It's only a thought. You can choose that thought. Even if you think it makes no difference, why not have the joy of the pleasant thought instead of the worry of the unpleasant one?
That's beautiful. And that really is what I think I've been trying to do. And that's, I think this prosperity 4-week course has leaned into me on that level. You know, I've really felt, not that everything is perfect, but that everything is okay. Like, it's good, right? It's, you know, some things happen and you have to ask yourself, well, how is this for my good? And that's okay to ask that too, right? What I've stopped doing is blaming, right? I can't believe this happened. It's because of you. We're here because of what you did, right? And you know, you live your, I mean, how many times have you been in a work environment, right, where it's like, it's the blame game. Everybody just wants to, like, it is what it is. Who cares how we got here? Like, let's figure it out, right? I mean, just having that attitude, which is funny, but that's what I've gotten from this last 4-week abundance, the prosperity section, is just that everything is good. Like, it is, even if you don't think it is, like, it's okay. It's all good.
Yeah. 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 So when it's not good, a lot of it's a fear or a worry. And when you actually analyze it, it's like, well, what am I actually scared of? And if you kind of deconstruct that fear, unpack it a bit, I mean, it's just a thought. And then when you go to do something that you're fearful about, you may feel the fear in the moment you're doing it, but the moment you're actually in the process of doing it or having done it, that fear is suddenly gone. It's like, oh, I did it, and it was not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, no, and that's been the last 2 weeks for me, and I've enjoyed it. Like, it's even like if I can't sleep, I get up. I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to be up.
Yeah.
Like last night I couldn't.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't sleep. I got up and I listened to one of Joshua's podcasts.
Okay. I mean, Joshua actually says that about sleep, that, you know, you wake up and then either you think, oh, I didn't sleep long enough, or I slept too long, or I didn't have the quality of sleep that I want. And they say you start from the moment you open your eyes in the morning, you start with this negative flow. It's like, why don't you wake up and say, right, I've had the perfect amount of sleep. And if I wake up too soon, then, hey, I get to spend an hour doing something else. And if I'm tired later on, you know, I can probably find somewhere quiet and close my eyes for 5 minutes and have a power nap, what the hell, and wake up refreshed again. So, and it's true, like, you wake up and you can judge it as perfect, or you can start to critique, you know, slept too long, didn't sleep long enough, quality of sleep wasn't good, I got hot, I got cold, you know, I didn't like the dream I was having when I woke up, whatever. You can have this whole litany of stuff, or you can say, hey, I woke up, I feel good, life is perfect, let's have fun.
Let's see where it takes us. Exactly.
Yeah.
It is. I actually have a call in 2 minutes. I have a 2:20 here today, but I love doing this, Rob, and thanks for continuing to push and send these Zooms.
Yeah. So we're starting to publish these on YouTube, and we may strip out the video and put them onto a podcast. So as by way of an outro, there's 2 things I want to say to the world. One is that if you want more information about the stuff, you can go to theteachingsofjoshua.com. You'll find Gary's stuff there. And also, we're putting together a website, which is a directory, like an information hub or portal. So it's not live yet, but it may be by the time people listen to this, which is it's loainfo.com. So simply loainfo.com, and that will be live sometime soon. And we have a number of directory websites. So the idea is that we will actually put a whole lot of resources there that people can find, which will be podcasts and books and courses and everything. So, okay, that's us.
I love it.
See you in a week.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'll see you next week.
Cool. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, Drew.
Thanks a lot, Rob.
Bye. Bye.